Hi, my name's Beth and I'm one of the diabetes midwives from the Women's Hospital. The aim in this video is just to talk to you about what gestational diabetes is, how it affects your pregnancy, labour, birth and afterwards. We'll talk about the risks for mum and baby and the plan of care for the rest of the pregnancy. So gestational diabetes is a temporary form of diabetes and it comes on in the pregnancy because of your pregnancy hormones, and for most ladies it goes away after you've had your baby. So what normally happens is when you eat your food, your blood sugars rise. Insulin is then released and that brings you back down to a normal blood sugar level. But when you've got gestational diabetes, it can stop your insulin from working as well as it should do, so your blood sugars remain on the high side. And it's high blood sugars over a long period of time that can potentially cause risks to you and your baby, which we'll discuss shortly. So to make sure the gestational diabetes has gone away after you've had your baby, we do recommend 6 weeks later, when the hormones have settled, that you go to the GP and you have a blood test done called a HbA1c, which is your diabetes blood test. However, we do know that when you've had gestational diabetes, you do have a 50% chance of developing type 2 diabetes in the next 5 to 10 years. So we do recommend that even if that initial blood test 6 weeks later after your baby is normal, we do recommend that you have that blood test done yearly just to make sure that everything's okay. We also know if you have any more babies, you are much more likely to get gestational diabetes again. So we do recommend that we test you for diabetes much earlier next pregnancy, and if that's negative, we repeat that again at normally between 24 and 28 weeks just to make sure everything's okay. So moving on to risks for baby, first of all, everyone should have a growth chart that looks like this. This is customised to you. It takes into account all of your demographic details, and we would expect that your baby grows anywhere between the two outer black lines, and that would be normal growth for you. But when you've got gestational diabetes, there can be a few problems with baby's growth, but most babies are very well grown, so please remember this. So if baby's got lots of sugar going to them for a very long time, in a small amount of cases it can cause babies to put on weight, and if they do, they generally do that around their tummy or shoulder areas. And we do know that big babies are harder to deliver, obviously, but definitely not impossible. There is a small chance that if baby becomes extremely large, way above the top line, it can result in a baby that gets stuck at delivery, and that's where their head delivers but their shoulder can get stuck on mum's pubic bone. But there's things we can do to deliver baby, and in most cases this doesn't happen. It's just a very small percentage of those very large babies. The other end of the spectrum is high sugar for a long period of time can damage the way the placenta works, and if that does happen, it can mean that baby could get less oxygen and nutrients and therefore doesn't get everything they need and plots small below the bottom line. So what we like to do is offer you growth scans from 28 weeks, 2 to 4 weekly, just to make sure baby's growing as well as they should do, and if there's any problems, a plan of care can be put in place with yourself. From a diabetes point of view, our national guidance and our trust guidance states that ladies should ideally have their babies before 40 weeks and 6 days. The reason for that is after 40 weeks and 6 days, there's some evidence to say that the stillbirth rate increases when you've got gestational diabetes. So to try and avoid this risk, hopefully most ladies would have had their babies between 37 and 40 weeks, whether that be by normal delivery or by caesarean section. But for the ladies who are aiming for a normal delivery and haven't had their babies by that time, we would discuss an induction of labour with you for 40 weeks, and the aim in that is that we can safely deliver your baby, so you've got your baby in your arms by that point, and that reduces that risk to you. When you go into labour, the national guidance and our trust guidance states that we should listen to your baby's heartbeat with your consent the whole way through during labour to make sure they cope well. And the other thing we like to do differently is we like to check your blood sugars hourly in active labour to make sure they're okay. There is a small chance that they can become a little bit unstable for a lot of different reasons. So some ladies do require an insulin drip through a cannula into their vein just to regulate those sugars until baby's born, and that would stop as soon as baby's born. The idea in that is we keep your blood sugars well within target range up until baby's born to reduce any of the risks that we've discussed for you and for baby. If you had a caesarean section, the only thing we would do differently is we would like to check your blood sugar before you go to theatre, because you'd be fasting for this operation. There are a couple of things that you can personally do to help maintain baby's blood sugars in that first 24 hours when they're delivered. So the first one is the midwife would talk to you about skin to skin after delivery. That's really good for baby because it keeps them nice and warm. We do know if they're cold, they'll shiver, waste their energy, and they're much more likely to drop their blood sugars. And the other thing is just feeding baby regularly. So we say try and feed baby within the first half an hour of life and every 2 to 3 hours after that. And that just gives baby that regular little bit of glucose they need to maintain their blood sugars. And there's lots of help around the hospital and when you go home with feeding. So just to note, if we keep your blood sugars within target ranges, it can reduce all of the risks that we've discussed today, but we can never fully eliminate all of the risks. So how do we control the gestational diabetes? So first of all, we like you to do your blood sugars 4 times a day for the entirety of the pregnancy and 1 day after baby's born, as instructed by our other video on how to do this. So, and that can tell us what's happening on a daily basis in your body so we can best manage and treat you accordingly. So we do know that 25% of our ladies go through the whole pregnancy maintaining with a good diet and exercise, and this forms a basis of the treatment. So we will ask the dietitians with your consent to contact you, and you should receive a telephone call from an unknown number. Please answer it, and it's for your consultation with the dietitians. You should receive a leaflet that looks like this, and the dietitians will go through that with you. But essentially the diet aims to reduce any sugary food and drink intake, because obviously more sugar that you put in your body, the more your body has to process, and it's reducing the amount of carbohydrates you have with each meal, but we don't want you to reduce and restrict this completely from your diet. This is because carbohydrates are your main source of energy and you need them to grow your baby effectively, do your daily activities, and you've got to do this for the rest of the pregnancy. We do know that 75% of our ladies would need some form of treatment for their diabetes, and that might be as time goes on, as your pregnancy hormones increase, your insulin tends to work less as pregnancy progresses. The 2 safe treatments, so you are aware, are either a tablet called metformin that you have with your breakfast and evening meal. That works in your body by helping the insulin that you've already got to work a little bit better to reduce your blood sugars. And the other option, if that doesn't work or you're on the maximum dose and your blood sugars are still high, would be teaching you how to inject insulin into your body, and we would teach you this and spend a lot of time to make sure that you feel confident with doing this. But just to note, most ladies don't need insulin in pregnancy. If you have raised readings above the target ranges that we've given you, please write down in the comments box next to your blood sugars what you've eaten, and that can really help us determine where to go with your treatment and care. We do realise that this is a huge learning curve, and you may have some raised blood sugars in the first couple of weeks. You're getting to know what your body can handle. But if you're worried about your blood sugars at all, or you want to ask any questions about this video, please give us a call. Our contact numbers are on the front of your orange notes. They'll be highlighted here. The diabetes midwives at the top, and the bottom is the diabetes nurses, and we can answer any of your questions. We will speak to you via the telephone and just answer any questions, and we'll book your next appointment to come and see the diabetes team, and this is where we'll go through your blood sugars. This appointment might be via telephone or it might be coming into the hospital, but we'll let you know. I hope this video has been useful for you. As I say, please let us know if you've got any concerns or any worries.